Minister for Foreign Affairs. Although we're seeing right now the first signs, the first stirrings of a resurgence of official and ministerial communication, one has to be even more of an incorrigible optimist than I've traditionally been to believe that when it comes to the 50th anniversary this year of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries, we will be able to celebrate anything like a return to the warmth and the normality of those past decades. And looking for reasons for the deterioration, a great deal has certainly been contributed by the Chinese side. Certainly since the emergence of the very assertive leadership of Xi Jinping, with China's defiance of international law in the South China Sea, some egregious domestic violations of human rights, particularly in Xinjiang, now in Hong Kong, and in the latter case involving the tearing up of treaty obligations, discriminatory and overprotective trade and industrial policies, culminating, of course, in the really quite punitive trade sanctions now applying to a number of sectors of Australian exports, periodic cyber attacks, some attempts to exercise undue influence over our governing institutions, and more recently the detention of those two Chinese-Australian, the journalist Chen Lei and the writer Yang Hengjun. But we also have to acknowledge that Australia itself has not been without blame for this catastrophic deterioration in our relationship. With too much strident, tone-deaf language, starting particularly, I think, with Malcolm Turnbull's speech in 2017 on the Foreign Influence Bill, through, of course, to Peter Dutton's really quite over-the-top war talk about Taiwan earlier this year. Also language of a very unhappy kind from the cross-party Wolverine groups, so self-described in recent times. We had the over-the-top police and security service raids on the homes of Chinese journalists living in Australia in 2020. We've had very tough foreign investment restrictions and foreign influence laws. We've had the tearing up of the manifestly harmless Victorian Memorandum of Understanding to participate in the Belt and Road Initiative. And we had, of course, the ill-thought-out operationally and ill-prepared diplomatically brain for an inquiry into China's COVID-19 response, which fueled very much the narrative that we are just America's deputy sheriff, leaving us a far easier target, as we are, than the United States, exposed to even greater Chinese counterpunching. Getting out of the hole we've now dug for ourselves, or to which China has clearly contributed, is not going to be quick or easy, and it's of course recently been made even more complicated by China's less than helpful response to Russia's legally, morally indefensible invasion of Ukraine. But as I've been arguing for quite some time now, I think we can work our way out of the hole, work it from the Australian end at least, by following the following 5 guidelines. One, first and foremost, Australian leaders, as the present Albanese government has certainly now recognised, need to stop digging, need to stop adding any more grounds for complaint to those already on China's charge seat, whether justified or not. Second, we do have to moderate our official language, as again the new government is very clearly doing this talk of balance and resumption of a saner relationship. That should include emphasising such positives as there still are in the Australia-China relationship, and remembering that even when our criticisms of Chinese behaviour is entirely legitimate, as much of it is, in diplomacy it's still the case that words are bullets. They have to be very carefully deployed. Third, I think the optics of independence are really pretty vital. Our leaders should make it absolutely clear that any negative Australians' positions on China reflect our own national judgments and not the guidance of any across-the-water masters in Washington, DC. Fourthly, Australia does need to acknowledge the legitimacy and the inevitability of, at some at least, of China's aspirations. This means not, I think, getting overly agitated. China wants its own strategic space, the military capacity to protect its own economic lifelines. I don't think we should get over-agitated by China wanting, in global policy making, a very significant rule-making as well as just rule-taking role. I think we should also accept that some, at least, of China's commercial concerns may not be entirely gratuitous or groundless. Many objective observers, in fact, think that Australia has seriously overdone our own anti-dumping complaints and actions against China, which have hugely exceeded the number coming in the other direction, even though the order of magnitude in terms of the economic significance of those actions is now being dwarfed by China's recent collection of sanctions. Finally, as always when a relationship is in difficulty, we should be working very hard to identify areas of common ground, potential common ground, which we do share common interests. And above all, I think climate change now, again, with the change of posture by the Australian government, lends itself to that kind of cooperative, collaborative behaviour, very much not just in our bilateral interest, but in the global interest. The reality is that in recent years, we simply haven't managed the need to both get along with China as well as to stand up to China.